East Germany developed actually during the 1960s and 70s to quite a successful economy. It overtook Britain in 1975 in domestic production, industrial production. But they always had this problem that we pointed out many times earlier on, of the inability to produce effective quality consumer goods. And this of course created a gulf between the East and the West. Also the maintenance of housing and so on was also kind of weak. They would build houses but not maintain them properly. So there was a sense of a certain element of decay inside East Germany, or even though East Germany was quite a powerful industrial country and a rich country. Nobody in East Germany was poor, there was no homelessness, no poverty, and so there was a kind of a mixed bag of affair in East Germany. But there was a dictatorship, obviously. The dictatorship exists because, very simple reason, that's my car there, yeah, waiting for me to pick me up here. How much do you think it cost me? But this car here, yeah. Yeah, in Germany, in West Germany now, but how much do you think it cost me?
60,000? 100,000 pounds?
100,000 euros it cost me actually, that one. It was second hand when I bought it. Now, in the West, most people think that's a good thing. If you're rich, good on you, mate. You've done a good job, you've worked hard, you become rich. That's generally the attitude in the West. Bill Gates, people turn around and say, they don't say he's a robber baron thief. They say he invented some software and he made money in a garage and eventually he became rich, and that's the sort of thing, isn't it? Generally, it's what people think. So if you're rich in the West, people think it's a good thing. However, in the East, because in the West what happens basically, someone owns capital, they invest that capital, they make more capital, there's a circulation process, they're involved in the production process. In the East, it was all publicly owned. So if someone was rich, what do you think people said? Huh? Stole it, that's right. So where'd you get the money from? How come you got a flashy car? I thought you're supposed to be a communist. Where's that money coming from? Where'd you get it from? How'd you get it? Because they don't play a role in the productive system. And so in the East, the hierarchical structure inevitably protects itself with a totalitarian dictatorship. If there is a privileged elite, they must protect themselves from investigation from the population. So the consequence of that is there's a different political dynamic in the East, in the countries of a planned economy, than there is in the capitalist world. At least in the richest capitalist countries, that is, yeah? So what happened was in 1985, Gorbachev came to power. The economy had slowed down in the Soviet Union, so people were questioning the privileges of those above. He began to allow more democracy to try and stabilize the society. But the more democracy allowed, the more people questioned the way that things were organized. And then in 1989, a protest demonstration broke out in one Stalinist country. Which country was that, the first one in 1989? Anybody remember? No. 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 Some 80 million people participated in protests. 80 million people in the main cities of this country. Not the Soviet Union. You haven't got a lot of options left with 80 million people. 1989, 80 million people. China, yes, China. The Chinese students and working people protested in the main cities in China on what was called Tiananmen Square. From March 1989 until June 1989, the students protested on the square. I went out there myself actually as a journalist at the time. On the 20th of May, the army joined the protests and they were withdrawn from the cities in Beijing, from the city of Beijing. They were sent back in again and crushed the protest demonstration on the 4th of June 1989 using tanks and machine gun fire to repress the protests. In May 1989, the Hungarian border to Austria was cut. The Iron Curtain was opened, the Berlin Wall was taken down. It was cut. That meant that the East Germans who wanted to leave East Germany could go to Hungary, cross over the border to Austria, and then go to Germany. In Germany, they get a West German passport. And therefore, they were automatically granted citizenship, all the rights, welfare, social security, all the rest of it, pensions that they wanted. And therefore, a section of the population, probably about 10%, started to have the intention of leaving East Germany. Particularly those who'd never been to the West. They wanted to go for the first time. They'd be able to go see something in the West. Erich Honecker, the leader of East Germany, always wore a hat like this, wandered around, very stern, but also was very concerned for the welfare of the population. That was a genuine concern on his part. He spent 10 years in concentration camp under the Nazis, so he had this anti-Nazi credentials. And in 1989, in May 89, he went to Alexanderplatz. You know where the big tower is? And he saw a big queue, and in East Germany, there was no advertisement. So if you wanted to get something, you see a big queue, you thought there might be something available there. And he saw there's a big queue at Alexanderplatz, and he thought, must be something available, I'll go and find out what's available. So he went and joined the back of the queue like this. He stood at the back of the queue. The person looked round at him like that, starts laughing, shakes his head, and then walks away. He takes another step forward, stands behind the next guy, looks round at him, shakes his head, and walks away. Then he takes another step forward, person in front of him, looks round at him, looks skeptically at him, starts to walk away. He goes, stop, stop. He says, what is it is available here? What are you queuing up for? She goes, we're queuing for exit visas, but if you're leaving, we don't need to. And that was, if you like, the signal for the transformation in East German society. People were discontented with the leadership. They wanted to remove the leadership, wanted to change East German society, democratize East German society. From a few demonstrations of people saying, wir wollen raus, we want to leave, there began to be a huge demonstrations of people who demanded, we're staying here, wir bleiben hier. We're going to change East German society. Some of you might remember those demonstrations. Anybody seen Goodbye Lenin? Goodbye Lenin. At the beginning of Goodbye Lenin is a demonstration on the 7th of October 1989. Mikhail Gorbachev came to Berlin. At the Palace of the Republic, the Shell building we saw at the beginning of the tour, the Parliament building of East Germany, they had the 40th anniversary of East Germany on the 7th of October 1989. There was an official celebration which Gorbachev was at. People cheered and chanted for Gorbachev, Gorbachev, Gorbachev. And behind there was a smaller demonstration, a few hundred people, who began to march off protesting against the East German government. They marched off up towards Prenzlauer Berg. I joined the demonstration myself that night. People marched along with their hands in the air. And they said, keine Gewalt, keine Gewalt, keine Gewalt, which means no violence, no violence. No, the police were lined up. Order troops of the youth organisation were lined up, tried to stop people, but they just broke the ranks and they marched up towards Prenzlauer Berg. The main police forces were lined up anywhere where it looked like people might be able to go towards the wall. But nobody wanted to go towards the wall. It's a very peculiar circumstance. People think that everybody wanted to storm the wall. The rulers thought people wanted to storm the wall, but actually nobody was interested in storming the wall. On the 4th of November 1989, a demonstration took place in Berlin of 1 million people on Alexanderplatz. It was the biggest demonstration in East German history against the East German government, and it was the breach in the dam. People demanded the democratization of East German society, free press, free media, freedom of expression, and actually that day they achieved it because the mass media broadcast everything that was said, all the protesters, the people were interviewed and so on the streets, they filmed the whole demonstration, the rallies, the speeches and so on and so forth. East German society suddenly became like something out of John Lennon's song Imagine. People actually controlled the society themselves from below. And there was no power above that could stop them. There was nothing. The police, the army wouldn't do anything. My friend was in the army at the time, and he was a conscript in the army, and he was told to join the troops circling Berlin. They circled Berlin. They were told, be prepared to take action. But they had already voted in their barracks amongst themselves, if we are asked to take any action, we will refuse to take any action. And a country without an army is no state at all, has no state at all. No army, no police force, no secret police could function anymore after the 4th of November.